Fleet Commander Kim Do-yeon called a council of war. Representatives from all 12 allied species gathered in the Great Hall of the Eternal Dawn. Humans, Kellery, Morthic, Dreven, and all the others sat around a massive circular table. The mood was strange. They had come expecting to celebrate victory in battle. Instead, they found themselves debating what to do with the defeated enemy. Do-yeon stood at the head of the table. His face was tired, his heart heavy. You have all heard the news. The Veldran Empire is destroyed. Not by our weapons, but by a plague they brought upon themselves. Only 10,000 survivors remain on the planet below. Then finish them, said a Kellery commander. His 4 fists slammed the table. They destroyed 3 of our worlds. They deserve extinction. I agree, said Weapons Chief Han Junho. He was a hard man of 60, a human who had lost his entire family on Earth. His eyes burned with hatred. We came for vengeance. Let us have it. Kill them all and be done with it. Many voices rose in agreement. The Veldrans had caused too much pain. They had murdered too many innocent people. The survivors should pay for the crimes of their empire. But not everyone agreed. Engineer Beek Soin raised her hand. The room fell silent. She was young, but everyone knew her brilliance. I have studied the survivors below, Soin said. They are not warriors. Most of them are children, elderly, and scientists. The soldiers are all dead. The leaders who ordered the attacks are all dead. These survivors had nothing to do with the destruction of Earth. They are still Veldrans. Juno spat. Yes, but does that make them guilty? Soin looked around the room. Should children die for the sins of their ancestors? Is that the kind of justice we believe in? Lieutenant Park Yuna spoke next. Her voice was quiet but strong. I watched Earth burn. I lost my mother that night. I have dreamed of revenge every single day for 50 years. She paused, gathering her thoughts. But revenge is not what my father wanted. He wanted justice. He wanted safety for humanity. He wanted a future where our children could live without fear. She looked at Junho. Killing 10,000 helpless survivors will not give us that. It will only make us the same as them. The debate continued for hours. Some demanded blood. Others called for mercy. The room was divided evenly, with no side willing to give ground. Finally, Do-hyun raised his hand for silence. Everyone turned to look at him. The final decision would be his. He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with the weight of 50 years. When I was a young man, I watched Earth die. I saw the flames consume everything I loved. That night, something dark was born in my heart. I called it vengeance, but really, it was hatred. Pure, burning hatred. He looked at the faces around him. Human and alien, all watching, waiting. I spent 50 years feeding that hatred. I built this fleet on hatred. I trained soldiers on hatred. Every decision I made was driven by the need to make the Veldrans suffer. Do-hyun's voice cracked. But standing here now, looking at what remains of our enemy, I realized something. What? Jian asked softly. Hatred is a fire that burns everything. The Veldrans were consumed by their hatred and fear of us. They destroyed Earth because they could not see us as anything but a threat. And now look at them, dead, broken, destroyed by their own actions. Do-hyun walked to the window and looked out at the stars. If we kill the survivors, we become what they were. We become an empire built on death and fear. And someday, in 10,000 years or 100,000 years, we will fall just as they did. Because hatred always destroys the one who carries it. He turned back to face the council. His eyes were wet with tears he had held back for decades. I did not fight for 50 years just to become another Veldran. I fought for humanity, for the best of what we can be. And the best of humanity is not revenge. It is mercy. It is the ability to look at our worst enemy and say, "We will not become you." Junho stood up angrily. "So we just forgive them? After everything they did?" "No," Doyen said firmly. "We do not forgive. We remember. We honor our dead by building a galaxy where such horrors can never happen again. But we do that through justice, not murder. The survivors below will answer for their empire's crimes. But they will answer to law, not to hate." He looked at each member of the council in turn. "I am not ordering you to agree with me. This decision belongs to all of us. But I am telling you what I believe. And I believe that killing helpless survivors will stain our souls forever." The room was silent. Then, slowly, Yuna stood up. "I stand with the commander." Soyen stood next. "As do I." One by one, others rose. Jiyan, Minho, leaders from the Morthic and Driven. Even some Kalori, their faces twisted with the effort of choosing mercy over revenge. In the end, the vote was close. But mercy won. Deng felt something release in his chest. A weight he had carried for 50 years finally lifted. "Then it is decided," he announced. "We will not destroy the Veldran survivors. Instead, we will help them. We will cure their plague if we can. We will teach them to live without empire. And in time, perhaps they can become part of the new galaxy we are building." The council dispersed. Some were satisfied. Others were angry. But all of them understood that something historic had happened. Humanity had chosen a different path. 1 week later, Do-hyun went down to the Veldran homeworld. He walked through the ruined streets of the capital city until he found Keldron Prime waiting for him. The old Veldran looked up at the human commander. "You did not destroy us." "No. Why?" Do-hyun sat down across from him. For a moment, the two old enemies just looked at each other. Two survivors of a war that had cost trillions of lives. "Because someone has to be the first to stop the cycle of death," Do-hyun said. "Someone has to choose to build instead of destroy. Today, that someone is humanity." Keldron Prime was silent for a long time. Then, slowly, he bowed his head. "I understand now why we feared you," he said. "Not because you were dangerous, but because you were better than us. You had something we never had." "What is that?" "Hope." The old Veldran looked up at the gray sky. "We lived in fear for 10,000 years. Fear made us cruel. Fear made us destroy everything we could not control. But you lost everything and still chose hope. That is true strength." Do-hyun stood up and offered his hand to the old Veldran. It was a human gesture of peace. Keldron Prime looked at it for a moment, confused. Then, slowly, he reached out and took it. "A new age begins today," Do-hyun said. "An age where species do not have to fear each other. Where the strong protect the weak instead of destroying them. Where the horrors of the past can finally be buried." He helped the old Veldran to his feet. "Your people have much to answer for, but they will answer with their lives, not their deaths. They will help rebuild what was destroyed. They will become part of the solution instead of the problem." Keldron Prime nodded slowly. "And humanity will lead this new age?" "No," Do-hyun said with a small smile. "Humanity will walk beside the other species as equals. The age of empires is over. The age of unity has begun." He turned and walked back toward his shuttle. Behind him, the Veldran homeworld stretched out in ruins. But even ruins could be rebuilt. Even dead worlds could live again. In orbit above, 900,000 ships waited. They had come for war and found peace. They had come for vengeance and found something better. They have found a future. Do-hyun looked up at the stars as his shuttle lifted off. Somewhere out there was the place where Earth had been. A scar in space where his homeworld once orbited. He would never forget what was lost. But now, finally, He could look forward instead of back. He could dream of what would be instead of mourning what had been. Humanity had been tested by fire. They had been broken and scattered and hunted across the galaxy. But they had survived. And in surviving, they had become something new, not conquerors. Not Avengers builders. Leaders. Healers. The fire of hatred in Doan's heart had finally gone out. In its place, something else burned. Something warmer. Something brighter. Hope. The stars stretched out ahead, full of possibility. And humanity, at last, was ready to reach for them, not as warriors, but as what they had always been meant to be. Guardians of the galaxy they had inherited. Builders of the future they had earned. Survivors. And now, finally, victors. Not over their enemies, but over themselves. The fleet arrived at the Veldran homeworld in complete silence. 900,000 ships hung in space above a dying planet. The soldiers who had come for war found only ruins. The enemy they had hated for 50 years was already defeated. Fleet Commander Kim Do-hyun stared at the planet below. His heart felt strange. For 50 years, this moment had been his only dream. He had imagined standing over the Veldran homeworld as a conqueror. He had imagined making them pay for Earth. Instead, he felt only confusion and a growing sense of dread. "Send landing parties," he ordered quietly. "I want to know what happened here." Captain Lee John led the first team down to the surface. She took 50 soldiers with her, along with engineer Baek Soing and a medical team. Their shuttle landed in what had once been the Veldran capital city. The city was in ruins. Great towers had crumbled to the ground. Streets were covered with dust and debris. But there were no bodies. No signs of battle. It was as if everyone had simply disappeared. "This is wrong," Jian said into her communicator. "Cities do not die like this. Where are the people?" "Keep searching," Do-hyun replied from orbit. "There must be survivors somewhere." They found them 3 hours later. In a massive underground bunker beneath the capital. The last Veldrans waited. There were perhaps 10,000 of them, a tiny remnant of a species that had once numbered in the trillions. They were thin and weak, their gray skin stretched tight over their bones. The human soldiers raised their weapons when they saw the Veldrans. Old hatred burned in their eyes. These were the monsters who had destroyed Earth. These were the murderers of 8 billion people. But the Veldrans did not fight. They did not even try to run. They just sat there, waiting to die. One of them moved forward. He was ancient, older than any Veldran Jian had ever seen. His body was bent with age, and his eyes were clouded. But he still carried an air of authority. "Humans," the old Veldran said. His voice was weak but clear. "We wondered if you would come. We hoped you would." Jian kept her weapon raised. "We came to destroy you, to avenge our homeworld." The old Veldran laughed. It was a terrible sound, like bones scraping together. "You are too late for that. We destroyed ourselves. All you can do now is listen to our confession." "What do you mean?" Jian demanded. "Jian, take me to your commander. I will tell him everything. It is time the truth was known." Jian hesitated. Every part of her wanted to pull the trigger. This creature was the enemy. His people had murdered billions. But something in the old Veldran's eyes stopped her. It was not arrogance or threat. It was sorrow. Deep, terrible sorrow. "Bring him up." Do-hyun's voice came over the communicator. "I want to hear what he has to say." An hour later, the old Veldran stood on the bridge of the eternal dawn. He was surrounded by human soldiers, their weapons ready. Fleet Commander Do-hyun sat in his command chair, watching the alien with cold eyes. Lieutenant Park Yuna stood beside her old commander. She was trembling with rage. This creature's people had killed her father's world, killed her mother, Killed everyone she had loved on Earth. Speak, Do-hyun said. Tell us what happened to your empire. The old Veldran bowed his head. My name was once Keldron Prime. I was the supreme commander of our invasion forces. I gave the order to destroy your Earth. The bridge went silent. This was the one. The murderer of billions was standing right in front of them. Do-hyun's hands tightened on the arms of his chair. You killed 8 billion people. Yes, Keldron Prime did not deny it. We burned your world because we feared you. Your species was young and weak, but you grew so quickly. In a few thousand years, you went from caves to starships. We had never seen anything evolve so fast. It terrified us, so you tried to wipe us out, Unispad. Yes, it was our way. For 10,000 years, we destroyed any species that might threaten us. We believed it was necessary for our survival. Keldron Prime looked up at them. We were wrong. Wrong about what? Do-hyun asked. About everything. About you. About ourselves. About the nature of the universe. The old Veldran's voice grew quieter. When we burned Earth, we took samples. Soil, water, plants, animals. We wanted to study your world, to understand why your species evolved so strangely. Engineer Baek Soin stepped forward. What did you find? We found our doom. Keldron Prime smiled bitterly. Earth was unlike any world we had ever seen. Your planet was alive with billions of tiny organisms. Bacteria, viruses, fungi creatures so small that we could barely detect them. Our worlds had nothing like them. You mean germs? Soin asked. Yes, germs. Your world was covered with them. They lived in your soil, your water, your bodies. You had evolved with them over millions of years. They were part of you. Keldron Prime paused. But we had no such protection. Do-hyun began to understand. A cold feeling spread through his chest. When we brought Earth samples back to our homeworld, the germs came with them. At first, nothing happened. The organisms seemed harmless. But they were not harmless. They were adapting, learning, finding ways to survive in our bodies. A plague, Jian whispered. Yes, a plague like nothing we had ever faced. It spread through our population like fire. Millions died in the first month. Billions in the first year. Our medicine could not stop it. Our technology could not cure it. Keldron Prime's voice cracked with emotion. The very thing we tried to destroy was destroying us from within. The bridge was completely silent. 900,000 ships had come for vengeance. They had found justice instead, but not the kind they expected. How many survived? Do-hyun asked. The 10,000 you found below are all that remain. From a population of 8 trillion. Tears fell from the old Veldran's clouded eyes. Your germs killed us. The organisms that lived harmlessly in human bodies became weapons of total destruction against us. We murdered Earth, and Earth murdered us back. Una fell into a chair, her strength leaving her. All those deaths, all that hatred. And in the end, we did not even have to fire a shot. No, Keldron Prime said. But that is not why I wanted to speak with your commander. There is something more important than the past. What could be more important? Do-hyun demanded. The old Veldran looked at him with eyes full of ancient wisdom. The future. Your species must learn from our mistake. We spent 10,000 years destroying others because we feared them. In the end, our fear destroyed us. Do not follow the same path. You want us to show mercy? Do-hyun's voice was sharp with anger. After what you did, I want you to be better than we were. The galaxy is watching you now. 12 species followed you here. They are waiting to see what kind of leaders humans will be. Keldron Prime knelt slowly, painfully, on the deck. Will you build an empire of fear, as we did? Or will you build something new? Something worthy of the species that survived Earth's fall. Do-hyun did not answer. He could not answer. His mind was spinning with too many thoughts, too many emotions. He had spent 50 years planning for this moment. 50 years dreaming of revenge. Now revenge had been taken from him, not by an enemy, but by microscopic organisms from his own homeworld. The universe had its own sense of justice. Earth had been avenged, but not by human hands. "Leave us," Do-hyun said to Keldrum Prime. "Guards, take him back to the surface. Keep him and the other survivors under watch." When the Veldrum was gone, Do-hyun sat alone on his bridge. The weight of history pressed down on his shoulders. 900,000 ships waited for his orders. Millions of soldiers waited to hear what came next. The war was over before it began. But the real battle, the battle for humanity's soul, was just starting. What would they become now that the enemy was gone? What would humanity do with its victory? Do-hyun looked out at the stars and wondered what his answer would be. The fleet traveled through space for 3 long months. 900,000 ships moved like a river of steel and fire. They crossed through regions of space that no allied species had ever visited. This was Veldran territory, the heart of the empire that had terrorized the galaxy for thousands of years. Fleet Commander Kim Do-hyun spent most of his days on a bridge of the eternal dawn. He ate there, slept there, and watched the stars pass by. Captain Lee Ji-on often found him staring at nothing, lost in thought. "You should rest, Commander," Ji-on said one evening. "We still have 2 months of travel left." Do-hyun shook his head. "I have rested for 50 years. I was resting when I should have been fighting. Every day of peace we enjoyed was a day we could have been preparing for war." "We were not ready then," Ji-on reminded him. "We are ready now, are we?" Do-hyun looked at the tactical display. It showed enemy territory stretching out in front of them. The Veldrans have millions of ships. They have weapons we have never seen. They destroyed Earth in 15 minutes. Ji-on sat down beside him. "I did not know Earth. I was born on Haven after the fall. But my parents told me stories. They told me about blue skies and green trees, about cities that touched the clouds, about a world where humans walked freely under their own sun." She paused. "I want to see a world like that someday. Not for myself, but for my children. For all the children who will come after us. That is why we fight. Not for revenge alone, but for hope." Do-hyun was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, a rare thing. "You are wiser than I am, Captain. I have spent 50 years thinking only of vengeance. Perhaps I forgot that vengeance is not enough. We must build something new after the old evil is destroyed. First, we must destroy the old evil," Ji-on said. "Then, we can talk about building." Navigator Choi Min-ho interrupted them. He was an older man now, one of the few survivors from the original Eternal Dawn crew. His hair had turned white, but his skills were still sharp. "Commander, we are approaching the first Veldram colony world. Long-range sensors are showing something strange." Do-hyun stood immediately. "What kind of strange?" "I am not detecting any Veldran ships. No defensive systems. No communications traffic." Min-ho looked confused. "The planet should be heavily defended, but it looks empty." The bridge went quiet. Everyone knew what Veldran colonies were supposed to look like. They were fortresses. They bristled with weapons and soldiers. The Veldrans were always ready for war. But this world showed nothing. "Send scouts ahead," Do-hyun ordered. "I want eyes on that planet before we get any closer." 3 small scout ships separated from the fleet. They flew toward the colony world at high speed. The whole fleet waited tensely for their report. Got an hour later, the scouts returned. The young pilot who led them looked pale and shaken. "Commander, the colony is abandoned," she reported. "All the buildings are empty. The ships in orbit are dead. No power, no crew. It looks like everyone just left. Left for where? Do-hyun asked. We do not know, sir. But there is something else. The pilot hesitated. There are symbols painted on the buildings. Strange symbols we have never seen before. They look like some kind of warning. Do-hyun felt a cold feeling in his stomach. Something was wrong. This was not how the Veldrons behaved. They never abandoned territory. They never ran from anything. Continue on course, he ordered after a moment of thought. But keep all sensors at maximum range. I want to know about any threat before it reaches us. The fleet moved deeper into Veldron space. They passed 5 more colony worlds over the next few weeks. Every single one was empty, abandoned, dead. The soldiers began to whisper among themselves. What had happened? Where had the Veldrons gone? Some thought it was a trap that the enemy was hiding, waiting to ambush them. Others thought the Veldrons had retreated to their homeworld to make a final stand. But Lieutenant Park Yuna had a different idea. She visited Do-hyun one night in his quarters. Her old face was thoughtful as she sat across from him. I have been studying the symbols from the abandoned colonies, she said. They are not military warnings. They are more like religious symbols. Symbols of fear and death. What do you mean? Do-hyun asked. I mean, the Veldrons were not preparing for an attack. They were afraid of something. Terrified enough to abandon worlds they had held for centuries. Whatever happened here, it was not war. Yuna leaned forward. Something else destroyed them. Do-hyun considered this. The Veldrons were the most powerful empire in the galaxy. What could possibly make them afraid? We will find out when we reach their homeworld, he said finally. Whatever happened, it does not change our mission. We came to end the Veldron threat forever. If something else has already weakened them, then our job will be easier. But even as he said the words, Do felt doubt creeping into his heart. They had spent 50 years preparing for a glorious battle. They had imagined facing the enemy in combat, proving humanity's strength. If the Veldrons were already destroyed, what would that mean for their vengeance? The fleet continued its journey. More abandoned worlds passed by. More strange symbols. More empty cities. The mood among the soldiers grew darker. They had come expecting war. Not Mysteries. Engineer Big Soin was one of the youngest officers on the Eternal Dawn. She was only 32, brilliant with machines and technology. She had examined pieces of Veldron equipment from the abandoned worlds. Commander, I found something interesting, she reported one day. The Veldron technology is not just abandoned. It is corrupted. Something damaged their systems from the inside. Like a disease that attacks machines. A computer virus? Do-hyun asked. No, nothing digital. It is more like a biological contamination. Their metals are weakened. Their electronics are filled with strange growths. Soin showed him images on a datapad. I have never seen anything like this. Minho added more troubling news. I am detecting unusual readings from the space ahead. There is some kind of debris field surrounding the Veldron homeworld. Millions of objects, all drifting dead in space. Wreckage? Do-hyun asked. Yes, Commander. Ship wreckage. Billions of tons of it. The Veldron home defense fleet has been destroyed. Minho's voice shook slightly. All of it. Every ship. Silence fell over the bridge. The great Veldron fleet, the terror of the galaxy, was nothing but debris floating in space. Do-hyun stood and walked to the main view screen. He could see the debris field now, a dark cloud surrounding a distant planet. Somewhere in that cloud were the remains of the enemy they had traveled so far to fight. What happened here? Ji-yeon whispered. I do not know, Do-hyun replied. But we will find out. He turned to face his crew. Their faces showed confusion, fear, and disappointment. They had prepared for the greatest battle in history. Instead, they found a graveyard. "We continue forward," Do-Yoon announced. "The mystery ends today. Whatever destroyed the Veldrons, we will discover the truth. And if any enemy remains any at all, we will finish what we came to do." The Eternal Dawn led the fleet through the debris field. Broken ships drifted past them like the bones of giants. Veldron warships that had once terrorized the galaxy were now nothing but twisted metal. Ahead, the Veldron homeworld grew larger in the view screen. It was still there, still spinning slowly through space. But even from this distance, Do-Yoon could see that something was terribly wrong. The planet's surface was not the healthy green and blue of a living world. It was gray and brown, like a bruise on the face of the universe. The journey was almost over. The answers were waiting for them, but Do-Yoon had a feeling that those answers would change everything they thought they knew about the war, about the Veldrons, and about humanity itself. The storm had reached its destination. Now it was time to learn the truth. 50 years passed like a long, painful dream. The survivors of Earth scattered across the galaxy like seeds in the wind. They found shelter on distant planets. They hid in asteroid belts and forgotten moons. The Veldron Empire searched for them sometimes, but the galaxy was vast. Humans learned to stay hidden. They learned to be patient. Admiral Pak Suho died 15 years after the fall of Earth. His heart gave out one quiet night. Some said he died of old age. Others said he died of a broken heart that never healed. His last words were to his daughter Yuna. "Finish what we started," he whispered. "Make them remember us." Yuna held her father's hand until it grew cold. She did not cry. She had no more tears left. Instead, she made a promise. She would build the fleet that would avenge Earth. She would not rest until the Veldrons paid for their crime. But Yuna was not the one who would lead that fleet. That honor went to someone else. Kim Do-Yoon was only 22 when Earth burned. He was a simple communications officer on the Eternal Dawn. He had watched the destruction of his homeworld with young, horrified eyes. That night changed him forever. He went from a cheerful young man to someone hard and cold. Over the next 50 years, Do-Yoon rose through the ranks. He studied warfare. He studied strategy. He learned everything about the Veldron Empire, their ships, their weapons, their weaknesses. By the time he was 72, he had become fleet commander, the highest rank any human could hold. But Do-Yoon knew that humans alone could never defeat the Veldrons. The Empire was too large, too powerful. Humanity needed allies. So he began to search. The galaxy was full of species that had suffered under the Veldrons. Some had been conquered. Some had been nearly destroyed. All of them lived in fear. Do-Yoon visited them one by one. He told them about Earth. He told them about the fire that still burned in human hearts. And he asked them a simple question. "Will you stand with us?" At first, many said no. The risk was too great. The Veldrons were too strong. But Do-Yoon did not give up. He kept asking. He kept building trust. Slowly, species began to join the cause. The Kelori were the first. They were tall beings with blue skin and 4 arms. The Veldrons had destroyed 3 of their worlds. They wanted revenge just as badly as humans did. The Morthic came next. They were small creatures, no taller than a human child. But they were brilliant engineers. They could build weapons that humans had never imagined. Then came the Driven, the Cesari, the Palini, and 7 other species. Each had their own reasons for wanting the Veldrons to fall. Each brought their own ships and soldiers to the Alliance. In the 50th year after Earth's destruction, Fleet Commander Kim Do-Yoon called a great meeting. Representatives from all 12 allied species gathered on a station hidden in deep space. The station was called Haven. It was humanity's new home. Do-Yoon stood before the gathered leaders. He was an old man now, with gray hair and deep lines on his face. But his eyes still burned with the same fire that had lit them 50 years ago. "Today, we begin the final chapter," he said. "For 50 years, we have hidden. We have built. We have prepared. Now it is time to strike." He pressed a button and a hologram appeared. It showed the Veldran homeworld, a massive planet surrounded by defense stations and warships. "This is our target, the heart of the Veldran Empire. We will take our fleet to this world. We will destroy their power forever, and we will avenge everyone they have murdered." A Kellery leader spoke up. "How many ships do we have?" Do-yoon smiled grimly. 900,000 warships. The largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. The room went silent. 900,000 ships. It was an incredible number. Even the Veldran Empire had never gathered such a force. "Our tactical officer, Captain Lee Ji-yeon, has calculated our chances of victory." Do-yoon continued. Gyeon was a woman of 45 with short black hair and sharp eyes. She had never seen Earth. She was born on Haven, but she carried the same burning desire for justice as those who had witnessed the fall. "Our odds are approximately 30%, Jian said. "The Veldran defenses are strong. Their weapons are powerful. Many of us will not come back. Then why should we go?" asked the Sasari leader. Do-yoon's voice was hard as steel. "Because living in fear is not living. Because our children deserve a galaxy without terror. And because the dead cry out for justice." He looked around the room at the gathered leaders. Human, Kellery, Morthic, Dreven, all different species. All united by one purpose. "I will not force anyone to join this mission," Do-yoon said. "If you wish to stay behind, I understand. But I am going. And every human who can hold a weapon is coming with me. We have waited 50 years for this moment. We will not wait anymore." One by one, the leaders stood. The Kellery commander raised his 4 fists in a warrior salute. The Morthic chief bowed deeply. The Dreven admiral placed her hand over her heart. Every species in the room pledged their support. Do-yoon felt his old heart swell with emotion. For the first time in 50 years, he felt something that was not grief or anger. He felt hope. "Then we launch in 30 days, he announced. "Prepare your fleets. Tell your soldiers what we fight for. And may whatever gods you believe in watch over us all." The next 30 days were a blur of activity. Ships were repaired and loaded with weapons. Soldiers trained day and night. Families said goodbye to loved ones who might never return. On the day of the launch, Do-yoon stood on the bridge of his command ship. It was still called the Eternal Dawn, the same ship that had fled Earth 50 years ago. It had been rebuilt many times, but the name remained. It was a reminder of where they came from and why they fought. Lieutenant Park Yuna stood beside him. She was 76 now, but she had insisted on joining the mission. She wanted to see the Veldrans fall with her own eyes. "Your father would be proud," Do-yoon told her quietly. Yuna nodded. "He is watching." "I know it." Through the view screen, they could see the fleet assembling. 900,000 ships of all shapes and sizes. Human destroyers flew alongside Kellery battlecruisers. Morthic weapon platforms floated next to Dreven carriers. It was a beautiful sight. Do-yoon opened a channel to the entire fleet. His voice reached millions of soldiers from 12 different species. "Today, we begin our journey to the heart of darkness," he said. "Some of us will not return. But those who fall will fall as heroes. They will fall fighting for justice. Fighting for the future." He paused, remembering Earth, remembering the screams, remembering the flames. "The Veldrans think they destroyed us. They think humans are weak. Today, we show them the truth. Today, we show them what happens when you hurt humanity. Today, we bring them the storm they created." He raised his hand. All ships engage engines. Set course for the Veldran homeworld. 900,000 ships began to move. Their engines lit up like 1,000,000 stars. The greatest fleet in galactic history was finally on its way. The war for vengeance had begun. Do-yun watched the stars streak past as they entered hyperspace. Somewhere ahead, the Veldrans were waiting. They had no idea what was coming for them. They had no idea that their victims had become their doom. "We are coming," Do-yun whispered to himself. "For Earth, for everyone you killed. We are coming." The eternal dawn led the way into the darkness. Behind it came 900,000 instruments of justice. The storm was gathering, and it would not stop until it had washed the Veldran Empire from the face of the galaxy. The stars were beautiful that night. Admiral Park Suho stood on the observation deck of his command ship, the Eternal Dawn. He watched Earth spinning slowly below him. The blue oceans, the green forests, the white clouds, everything looked peaceful. 8 billion people lived down there. His wife was one of them. His mother was another. Suho had served in the human space fleet for 30 years. He had seen many worlds. He had traveled to distant galaxies. But Earth was always the most beautiful. It was home. His daughter walked up behind him. Lieutenant Park Yuna was 26 years old. She had her mother's kind eyes and her father's strong jaw. She was one of the best pilots in the fleet. "Father, you should rest," Yuna said. "You have been standing here for 3 hours." Suho smiled, but did not turn around. "I like watching home. Your mother sent me a message today. She said the cherry blossoms are blooming in Seoul. She wants us to visit next month." "We will," Yuna said. "After this patrol ends, we can take leave together." Neither of them knew that next month would never come. The first warning came at exactly 11:47 p.m. Earth Standard Time. A young officer named Choi Minho was monitoring the long-range sensors. He saw something strange. Thousands of objects were approaching Earth at impossible speed. They had appeared from nowhere. "Admiral! Admiral!" Minho shouted into his communicator. "Unknown contacts. Thousands of them. They came out of some kind of portal." Suho ran to the bridge. His heart was pounding. When he saw the sensor display, his blood turned cold. There were not thousands of ships. There were millions. The Veldran Empire had found Earth. Humanity had known about the Veldrans for 50 years. They were an ancient race that conquered galaxies. They believed that only they deserved to exist. Every other species was nothing but insects to them. Humans had tried to stay hidden. They had tried to avoid the Veldran territory. But somehow, the Veldrans had found them. "All ships, battle stations," Suho commanded. His voice was calm, even though his hands were shaking. "Send an emergency message to Earth. Tell them to activate all defenses." But it was already too late. The Veldran weapons were unlike anything humans had ever seen. They did not use missiles or lasers. They used something else, beams of pure energy that could melt steel like butter. The human defense platforms around Earth started exploding one by one. Each explosion was 1,000 lives lost. Suho watched helplessly as his fleet was torn apart. The Eternal Dawn shook violently as enemy fire hit their shields. Alarms screamed throughout the ship. People were dying everywhere. "Father!" Yuna grabbed his arm. "We have to retreat. We cannot win this." "I know," Suho whispered. But his eyes were fixed on Earth. The Veldrans did not just want to defeat humanity. They wanted to destroy them completely. Giant Veldran warships moved into position above Earth. They charged their main weapons. The weapons glowed with terrible red light, and then they fired. Suho had seen many terrible things in his life. He had fought in wars. He had watched friends die. But nothing could prepare him for what he saw next. The red beams hit Earth's surface. Where they touched, everything burned. Oceans boiled away in seconds. Mountains crumbled to dust. Cities that had stood for thousands of years were gone in the blink of an eye. Seoul, Tokyo, New York, London, Mumbai, Beijing. One by one, the great cities of Earth disappeared in fire. Yuna screamed. She fell to her knees, crying. Other crew members were crying too. Some were praying. Some just stared with empty eyes. Suho could not cry. He could not move. He just watched as his homeworld died. His wife was down there. His mother. His friends. Everyone he had ever known on Earth, all gone. The attack lasted only 15 minutes. That was all it took to murder 8 billion people. When it was over, Earth was no longer blue and green. It was black and red. A dead world. A grave for humanity's history. Admiral, a voice said weakly. It was Communications Officer Kim Do-yeon, a young man of only 22. His face was wet with tears. We are receiving messages from the surviving ships. About 2,000 made it. They are asking for orders. 2,000 ships, out of a fleet of 50,000. And on those ships, perhaps 100,000 survivors. That was all that remained of humanity's military power. Suho finally found his voice. It was rough and broken. Tell them to run. Tell them to scatter across the galaxy. Go to every ally we have. Hide. Survive. What about Earth? Minho asked. Should we try to rescue survivors on the surface? Suho looked at the burning planet. He knew the answer, but saying it out loud was the hardest thing he had ever done. There are no survivors. Earth is dead. The Eternal Dawn turned away from Earth. The other surviving ships did the same. They engaged their fastest engines and ran. Behind them, the Veldran fleet did not follow. They had done what they came to do. Earth was destroyed. Humanity was broken. As the ship jumped into hyperspace, Suho finally allowed himself to feel. The tears came silently. They ran down his weathered face and dripped onto his uniform. His daughter held on to him, sobbing against his chest. We will make them pay, Yuna said through her tears. Someday, we will make them pay for this. Suho put his arms around her. He looked out at the streaking stars of hyperspace. His heart was filled with something dark and cold. It was not just grief. It was not just anger. It was something deeper. Something that would burn inside him for the rest of his life. Yes, he said quietly. Someday, they will answer for what they did tonight. I swear it on every soul we lost. Humanity will have its vengeance. The Eternal Dawn carried them away into the darkness of space. Behind them, Earth continued to burn. The cradle of humanity was gone. But humanity itself was not finished. Not yet. In the hearts of every survivor, a fire was lit that night. A fire of grief and rage and determination. The Veldrans thought they had ended humanity. They thought they had crushed a weak species beneath their boot. They were wrong. In the 50 years that followed, they would learn just how wrong they were. They would learn that humans were not weak. They would learn that humans never forgot. And they would learn that some debts could only be paid in blood. But that night, all Suho could do was hold his daughter and cry for everything they had lost. The war for vengeance would come later. For now, there was only grief. The stars outside were cold and uncaring. But somewhere in that vast darkness, humanity would find a way to survive. And then, they would find a way to strike back. The fall of Earth was not the end of the story. It was only the beginning.